Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Youth Views. Apologies to viewers for starting this a little bit, a few minutes later than planned. Technology was the reason, as always. I want to welcome my guest tonight. We are debating the debate tonight, the leaders' debate that took place on the television from 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock. I want to welcome a debutant to the channel, George Hayes. How are we doing?
I'm all right, mate. You?
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks for coming on, my friend. And Cooperman, we have you as well, a regular to the channel.
Hello, great to be here. And I'm a bit surprised that you're here, George. What do you like doing?
Cooper, just noticing on
I
your
thought I'd dip
sound.
my toe back in the water.
Okay, I'll mute myself if the noise is too loud.
You're just a little bit distant from the mic as well, so if you can adjust that. Okay, guys, without further ado, let's get straight into it. Tonight's debate, very controversial because it was basically run by ITV, who only wished to invite the leaders of the two main parties, Jeremy Corbyn of the Labour Party and Boris Johnson, current Prime Minister and leader of the Conservative Party. And the Lib Dems, I believe, went to court in order to try and challenge that decision, and unfortunately lost. And that was in the news yesterday. I mean, guys, did we miss? I mean, it was only an hour long, the program. It would have been nice if it was longer. But did we miss Sturgeon and what's her face Swinson tonight?
No, not really. But
Alec.
they're on at like 10 p.m. here, so if we want to listen to what they have to say, we probably have to finish this before 10 o'clock.
George?
I think, considering they've got debates where they are in, I think it's right that you have a debate between the two people that can actually be Prime Minister. That's my opinion.
Because I think that was what the intentions of today was, is really just to give. I mean, let's not kid anybody. The two main parties are the ones who have got the best chance of forming a majority to come into government and to obviously become Prime Minister. But do we think that maybe Jo Swinson may have added anything to the debate today, different to what we heard?
No,
I think she'd have been. I'll let John go.
Apologies. Apologies. I don't think she would have added anything. She'd probably just gone on about remaining in the EU, probably gone about Hillary Clinton and hip-style separity. Women are being treated like sexism.
Well, she wouldn't have, though, because she'd have got on the show. That's the point that she was making, because she couldn't get on the show, Cooper, isn't it?
Probably, but still. But knowing her, she'd probably be a Clinton-style debater.
I mean, I must admit, George, I don't know about you, but I must admit that I felt Johnson was going to come a lot more personal against Corbyn tonight. I tweeted earlier, and I thought, and my discussions with colleagues and whatnot, that he was going to come in with the anti-Semitism thing himself and use these words like Stalin and, maybe a Russian spy, these kind of things. But by his own standards, George, he was quite professional, wasn't he?
I agree with that. I think I was expecting him to come into the debate, and because he knows that Corbyn's got the upper hand on these public service issues, his best way of putting people off Corbyn would have been to go and say IRA, terrorist sympathiser, anti-Semitism, all those things that he feels he's got the upper hand on Corbyn.
And I'm not sure whether the audience would have had that necessarily, though, George, because I think if you heard by the moaning and groaning and the laughter points at certain situations, the audience got quite fed up. I mean, by the end, when Johnson kept on going on about, he was basically, wasn't he using even questions that have got nothing to do with Brexit, he was trying to bring Brexit into the conversation. Did you feel as well that the audience were getting a little bit frustrated by that by the end.
I think a large section were, but I also think that some of the audience were dead set on being anti-Corbyn.
Yeah.
So, but like the ones that booed him, saying we should help people in poor countries, which was quite a strange thing to see. But I think that overall, Johnson didn't really attack Corbyn where he could have, and I think Boris almost played this debate safe, knowing that he's got a lead in the polls, and so he thinks he can coast the election. But we've seen before that might not be the case.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And Cooper, just bringing you back in now, do you think that was maybe something that his advisors had done? That look, don't be normal, Boris. Just be be a bit more professional and don't go too personal. And do you think basically they asked him to just keep on rambling on about Brexit?
It wouldn't surprise me if that was a strategy to do, since, well, where's that echo coming from? Is that from my computer or?
I'm not sure.
Okay, I might change onto my tablet in a minute, but let's see. Hold on, let me just change.
Okay, while you're doing that, George, what do you think? I mean, what about Corbyn's camp? Do you think that Corbyn followed what his camp would have told him today? That look, just stick to policy, stick to welfare, stick to I mean, I personally probably would have liked Corbyn to dip a little bit more into the populist arena of establishment versus the people. Do you think that Corbyn's performance went to plan?
I think maybe stuck a little bit. I think his advisor's plan, first of all, was he needed to emphasise his second referendum policy and frame it in the way that he thought would be most appealing to both Leave and Remain voters. But I think in the end, he got stuck very early on repeating the same thing. And I think to start with, I thought he was struggling because of that. But then later in the debate, where in topics where he's more comfortable, like the NHS especially, he definitely got a lot stronger. The only time anyone really went on the attack was when he attacked Boris Johnson over letting American companies into the NHS. I think that was the only point where anyone really attacked anyone else, rather than it just being, a kind of play it safe debate where no one really wanted to cock up.
Yeah, and I guess the thing is, George, you make a good point here, is that Boris doesn't have, in comparison to Corbyn, much going for him other than obviously a Brexit deal and an opportunity to get Brexit done, as he so-called keeps on saying. But I think that Corbyn really, what I liked about what Corbyn did tonight is he made a point that, this fundamental of we'll get a trade deal done in 12 months' time, whoever wins the election, he banded the figures around of 7 years, which Boris Johnson didn't refute, did he?
No, he never really went. Never really addressed Corbyn's point about the Canada deal taking 7 years with the EU and things like that. But I think at the same time, Corbyn also, even though his likely answer would have been, I'm going to stay neutral, he looked a little bit unclear on what he'd do in a campaign in a second referendum.
Yeah.
And I think that will hurt him because people have really got entrenched in their camps.
Yeah.
There's not many floaters anymore. You're either pro or against for most people.
I agree with that. And Cooper, just is your sound working now, Cooper?
Let's see.
Yeah, I can't hear anything.
I think it might be yours. I think it might be yours, actually. But I don't know. Let me just try going on my laptop again, but this time with headphones.
Okay. George, what I was saying is and I can't understand why the Corbyn camp doesn't just do this. And this is what I think he should say. I think what he should be doing is he should be saying openly and honestly that why do we have to be party political on a decision and on a situation that has basically split the country, and be honest and say my party is split on this, your party split on this, but actually, Boris, you chucked out the people that didn't agree with you, and that would have scored some points, to be honest with you, right? I think you should have further said that, look, we're bringing a new fold into this referendum. I have my view, but I think it would be unfair for me to come out and commit to either side. And that's why I want to let the people decide and then go with, we will implement whatever the people say. What do you think about that one, George?
I think it'd work. Okay, George is also gone now. But
I didn't realise you were back in, but Cooper, while you're there, you may as well.
But I think let's see. Oh, I don't really hear the audio thing, so the headphones are working now. So hey, so it might have been George's in the end, but hey, one thing I think that probably might be better received than what it is, though. I still
it's better than saying the same thing again and again.
Yes.
Right?
Okay. Yes. I know.
I think the audience were getting very frustrated with and that's the thing that the political audiences hate, because that's when they say, "Oh, he's a politician," and that's what I think. I would agree with George when George said earlier that Mr. Corbyn had a slow start. I think
George is back.
Yes, George is back. Yeah, I think that's what he could have said and he should have said, because I think there's an honesty behind this, but an honesty that Mr. Corbyn is not necessarily expressing.
My view is that if he did that, it kind of winning points with people who kind of think, you know what, at least he's being honest. It's a bit of a mess. Let's get it sorted, kind of thing. And I think you get a bit of respect for that.
To be honest, I'm pretty certain, due to the fact that his advisors have not really done anything right on Brexit, particularly with the whole NEC candidates. Let's see, for the EU elections, I don't really think they've properly thought out how to solve the whole Brexit mess, because, well, face it, you had the EU elections, which was a mess, and you had the conference, which was a mess. So I doubt that they would think of anything that would be really great for the general election message.
Yeah, but question for you guys. When the 2016 referendum took place, it was viable for parties at that stage to be divided and campaign for either side. We saw it with the Conservatives in the fact that they had a number of Remainers in terms of their MPs, and they were on the Remain camp. We saw it on the Labour side. What's her name? The Northern Irish lady who was
Kate Hoey.
Kate Hoey, shouldn't have forgot her name. Kate Hoey, shoulder to shoulder with Nigel Farage. I mean, it was a despicable picture, don't get me wrong. But what I'm saying is that if it was legitimate then to divide camps for campaigning, why has politics suddenly gone into, well, party has to decide a side? And that's what I'm saying is why can't Mr. Corbyn, because the press are going to rip this apart now, guys. You know, however, I think my view on this is that I think Corbyn won that debate tonight. I'll take your views in a minute on whether you feel it was a draw or a win or a loss. But I think if he really wants to put this Brexit argument to bed in the election, there is absolutely no harm in coming out and having some honesty around the divisions on Brexit in all parties.
Well, that's because of Brexit entrenchment, and, well, it's very hard to try and be a moderator when you're in the absolutes. Everyone's viewing it as black and white, not grey.
This is the problem.
And it's just like, for many people, it's like, you're not picking a side. You need to pick one, otherwise you're with us or against us. It's similar to how George Bush said, you are either with us or you're with the terrorists.
George, I felt through the debate that Mr. Johnson was using every opportunity to talk about Brexit, and we talked about potential strategy, and it's likely that the strategists behind him were saying, look, basically that's how you're going to win this. Do you think that he came out of this credible or not, Mr. Johnson, by doing that?
For the first 15 minutes, maybe 10, 15 minutes, I thought he was just ahead of Corbyn because it looked like he was just hammering home a message. I think once it got to half hour, 45 minutes in, it seemed a bit like he only had one thing to talk about. And I was watching the debate with my dad, and he said, I agreed with Johnson to start with on the Brexit, but he just keeps going on about it. It's getting annoying. Why wouldn't he talk about anything else?
Yeah, and he's been known, hasn't he? Some of the people who've worked most closely with him have said that he's a very scant preparer. He's not got really an eye for detail. And even though I think Boris Johnson did better than I thought he would tonight, it seemed to me as if he was quite ill prepared.
I think the kind of underprepared look is almost something that he regards as part of his appeal.
Yeah.
The kind of Boris the buffoon, I'm just kind of ambling my way through being Prime Minister. It'll be a bit of fun and I'll do what the people want. That kind of act is what he's going for. And I think because of that, I think almost being unprepared is the best way. I think on one issue he was very over-prepared, which was constantly saying get Brexit done to the point where people were probably turning their tellies off. But then on the other issues, so underprepared, he didn't have any figures to refute what Corbyn was saying on the NHS and things like that.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I would share that view. That I think you could, if you were to split it into different segments, you'd probably say that Johnson won the segment on Brexit, which I think is probably accepted generally out there in any case. Hence the lead in the polls. But I think on most other subjects, when it came to the NHS, when it came to privatising of the NHS, I think Mr. Corbyn destroyed him. If I'm honest with you, I think, and the question is as well, Hooper.
Yeah.
Who out of the two looked more statesmanly?
I'd say for the most part Corbyn, though the one in terms of appearance, he could have probably gone without the glasses.
Yeah.
Because
so you're looking at his physical sort of appearance as well within that.
Well, the physical appearance shouldn't really matter, but I think I heard some people bring it up. And so there's always that to consider. But I think Corbyn did it the most professionally. I mean, the thing I liked most was when he was asked a question about the monarchy, and he said, it needs improvement.
Very diplomatic, wasn't it? Very diplomatic.
Mm-hmm.
George, what about you? The monarchy one was always going to be a tricky one. I personally felt that it should have tripped up Johnson more, but I think because it was the last question and they wanted to finish on time, I do feel that there should have been a little bit more grilling, because he was asked yesterday at the CBI meeting by a member of the press, George, that what do you think of Prince Andrew's sort of around the line of Prince Andrew's antics and whatnot? Because it is a hot topic at the moment. And Boris Johnson said, "Oh, I wouldn't dream of talking about the royal family." He batted it off. And I think had this not been the last question of the day, or one of the last questions of the day, I think that Boris Johnson could have got a bit more of a grilling and uncovering. What do you think?
I agree with that mostly, but I think that point goes far wider, and I think that's the story of the whole debate. I think either it needed to be just on one topic and then have a couple of debates, or a bit longer, because there was no real grilling of anything. I think it was poorly moderated. No one really got pushed back on their weak points. Boris never got asked why he's not dead in the ditch or anything like that.
Yeah.
Corbyn never got pushed enough on how he'd campaign, or whether he would campaign, whatever, just because there wasn't enough time, and both were going over in their answers, and the moderator wasn't strong enough to hold them to account. I think if we'd seen the same debate with Andrew Neil or Jeremy Paxman or someone of that ilk, then we would have heard a lot more answers that the public want to hear.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. I think she picked up on themes, but she didn't really ask too many direct questions to either one of them. And actually, 60 minutes was not enough in terms of, this is the future of our country, and people are going to be making decisions on what they sort of see this evening on the TV. But you mentioned a few seconds, around a minute ago, George, about weak spot, and the question of anti-Semitism was asked to Jeremy Corbyn. Funnily enough, as I would point out, as my viewers would know, Islamophobia wasn't touched on so much in the Conservative Party. Do you think that he handled the anti-Semitism question well?
I think he handled the question well, but I think the thing is, anyone could answer that question in a scripted and prepared way, which it obviously was, and do it quite well. And that's easy to do. There was no pushback on it because the moderator didn't push back in the right points, because it's ITV, there's adverts at some point, etc. So we never actually got a real grilling on it. Like, his answer to the actual question was very good, but he could have maybe fumbled if they'd pushed at him a bit more.
Excellent. No, you're right. I would totally agree with all of that. I just want to welcome on the stream. I don't know if you guys have seen on the screen. Tom, how are we?
I'm all right, thanks. How you doing?
From what have you been up to this evening?
What have I been up to?
Yeah.
I had a family member's birthday, so I had to go out for a meal.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you were saying that yesterday.
Yeah.
Listen, thanks for joining us, and I know you probably got back quicker than planned for this. I don't know if you know George Hayes. Obviously, you know Cooperman, but George.
Yeah.
This is Tom, young enthusiast. I think you know him from the Bullet Group as well. Tom is hot on the topic with this kind of stuff. Did you catch the debate then, Tom?
I haven't seen it yet. I'm trying to find it now.
Well, let me just before let's get the views of everybody first, so that we can sort of try and come to some conclusion on this within the next few minutes. George, starting with you, do you feel that overall Corbyn came out stronger than Johnson on this, or do you think it was a draw, or do you think Johnson smashed him out of the park?
I think that Corbyn gets a slight win on the debate, but I don't think it will have much of an impact because no one really landed any blows. It was because there was no pushback on anything. No one fumbled anything, I don't think, bar maybe Boris going on a bit too much about Brexit. And so nothing really happened. It's not a debate that's going to change anyone's vote. It'll just
I think
Corbyn supporters will probably say he won, and Boris supporters will probably say he won. It wasn't really a very. It was a non-event basically. After all, it's been hyped up to be.
It was hyped up massively, doesn't it? Wasn't it really? I mean,
it goes back to the moderator for me.
Yeah. No, you're right, and it's all relative. We've got. Sky Echo 7 says Corbyn was more statesmanly in her view. Gavin Kitson says, why was anti-Semitism mentioned but not Islamophobia?
I think one of the reasons why Corbyn didn't bring up the anti-Islamophobia thing is because he'd probably be accused of just gerrymandering to a different question, saying like, what aboutery or something.
Well, I don't think that's Corbyn's style in any case. I mean, we're not at Prime Minister's question, but I think what Gavin is saying in his question here, and correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm incorrect on this, is that why didn't the moderator or even any of the audience members in their questions, why was only anti-Semitism mentioned but not Islamophobia? That's what I think the question is.
I assume it's either because Islamophobia is not talked about enough, or the fact that the news didn't see it as a serious issue, or that there's a bit of bias towards talking about anti-Semitism over Islamophobia, since some Tory voters, the more Tommy Robertson-like, probably don't really care about Islamophobia, so there might be that.
Tom, you'll get this when you watch the replay. There was this. I know the moderator we do agree was poor today, and you'll probably find that.
Yeah,
But when they
I
were
am
talking,
good.
when they were talking about the date of Brexit, Boris Johnson came out and said, "We will get Brexit done by the 31st of January." So he's set another date now. And the moderator, I mean, I don't even know who she is, to be honest with you, so don't ask me for a name. But she said, "Will you mint a new coin, Boris?" Which I found quite funny, to be honest with you, because
Yeah, I've had a look on Twitter and stuff over like the past half an hour, and to be fair, from what I've seen, it seems like poor presenter or whoever was questioning somebody described her as a high school teacher. Apparently, the questions were poor, and overall, it was just overhyped. From what I've seen, Corbyn's performance wasn't that great in comparison to some of his other better stuff. But Boris being Boris, you're not expecting anything good there. Like, I mean, from what I've seen, little clips, I'd probably say, I mean, you could only expect that Corbyn would come out on top. But again, it doesn't seem like a game changer as it often is in
yeah, what
elections.
George said, yeah.
I think it's just going to reinforce the whole. Oh yeah, they're both equally as bad, or they're bad as each other. They're all the same, the usual crap that you get on the doorstep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So unfortunately, it doesn't seem that great. But then again, that was always the fear, though, because you're always going to expect that the questions are always going to be about Brexit. Labour's Brexit policy is going to be I don't know what I said, but I probably expect it's going to be the same crap. I bet Boris regurgitated a bunch of crap saying that.
Well, you're absolutely right. That's exactly what happened, Tom.
I bet Boris mentioned that he's going to, what's the word? He's going to negotiate a deal and campaign against it. Did he say that?
He did many times, yeah.
There we are. No surprise, just ignorance right there.
There was two things that came out. I mean, the moderator could have asked a question and said, "Mr. Johnson, what colour is the sky today?" And Boris Johnson would have made 2 points. He would have said, "We want to get Brexit done," and ask him which side he'll campaign, ask him which way he'll campaign. Sorry for my poor Boris Johnson impression, guys. But that was basically literally the substance of each one of his answers. It just and actually, as we were discussing earlier before you came on the stream, a very sort of balanced audience, I would say, by the clapping for both sides, a very balanced audience as a whole got very frustrated with Boris Johnson towards the end, because even towards the very last question, when somebody had put a little joke question in around sort of what would you like for Christmas, again, he could have been a bit more classy and answered it and had an opportunity to make the audience laugh and the viewers at home laugh. But what did he do?
Get Brexit done.
Yeah, you know,
you
Boris,
can tell.
you can't take Boris out of Boris.
You can tell. Yeah, they're running scared. I mean, you can tell, like, the fact that they're having to avoid every single question regarding austerity, economics, or any of their plans. They're trying to focus on Brexit for a reason. And I mean, of course, Labour's going to try to divert all the questions away from Brexit, because our strongest policies are around the NHS. They are around our investment plans and our tax plans. These are the things that get us votes, rather than Brexit, which we've been spending the last 2 years trying to get away from. But
we were quite sort of on the chat talking about this, and we were quite happy that Brexit was first, because we thought, you know what, get that out of the way and let's start talking. George, I happen to think that when Mr. Corbyn started bringing in the answers around the NHS, the waiting lists, the statistics around those waiting lists and how poorly the NHS is performing, I think he destroyed Boris Johnson on those points.
I think, in my view, he had kind of a couple of minutes where he seemed to have Boris on the ropes. And then at that point, again, the debate just ended up meandering. And we never really got any kind of definitive winner out of even that. Like, Corbyn obviously looked stronger, but I don't think he had the opportunity to destroy him, because, again, the moderator came in and wanted to put her 5 eggs in, whatever.
Yeah, she didn't give enough time
actually,
for each answer, did she?
Both of them ended up overrunning a lot, and I don't think that's either theirs. Fair. I think they just didn't have enough time.
Perhaps they should have done it as a 2 hour. Perhaps this should have been a 2-hour or an hour and a half debate instead of just 1 whole hour.
Yeah, I would agree with that. 1.5 hours would have been enough. The thing, and the other thing as well, Tom, you'll find on the rerun, is that in a very unprofessional manner, Boris Johnson kept on disrespectfully going over when time was enough, and the moderator had said, okay, time's up. He'd raise his voice to talk over her in order to get just a few more. It just felt very desperate.
Well, you can see because that's what the entire Brexit campaign's around: get Brexit done, get Brexit done, and get Brexit done. But that it just proves that, like I said earlier, they are running scared. They're trying to avoid everything about austerity. Like as I was saying in the group earlier, that it's literally gone on the ropes because austerity has been for nothing. You're supposed to cut back on national debt, but it's doubled. They've borrowed more than every Labour government in history combined over the past 9 years. So, and it's the same like the Liberal Democrats. They're trying to focus on Brexit because that's the only thing getting them votes these days. And that's the thing, right? And they say this election's dominated by Brexit, but I don't really think it is. Because on the doorstep, people are not so focused on Brexit as they made out.
No.
There is a lot of discussion around the NHS, and that is what's getting Labour's support. Of course, no doubt they brought up anti-Semitism. You can just expect that, can't you? But I'm not surprised there was no mention of Islamophobia. That is just typical, to say the least.
Well, it was ITV, wasn't it, Tommy? What would you expect?
Yeah, it's not too great. I mean, at least it's not a BBC.
Well, that one is yet to come. And I think, as Cooper said earlier, that and Co will be on the BBC later today. So
I'm kind of disappointed, really. I thought this was going to be quite a big one. Like this is usually election time. Every general election, we always get the question, "Who would you rather prime minister?" in a big debate. But of course, I think this was really unfortunate, really, because usually this is where things start to take off. This is where the polls begin to change. And this is where the two-party system really starts to come into play, or often knocks out a lot of the smaller parties. But I think more than anything, this has just reinforced the whole they're all the same or they're as bad as each other rhetoric. It's probably not so good for us, really.
Yeah. Well, let's see. I mean, we'll look at polls thereafter.
Hopefully. Like George said, I don't think it's a game changer.
I think one possibility is that we've all become so cynical with the debates going on right now that we might be a bit too judgmental.
Yeah, I mean, there's every chance. And George said earlier that, generally speaking, Corbyn supporters will say, Corbyn smashed it out of the park and blah, blah, blah. But inevitably, we already take a view and we take a side. It's about those undecided, really, which is a bigger pool than we actually realise. And George is totally right. On the Brexit issue, most people have pitched themselves where they want to be. So actually, and just taking Tom's point within that actually that's not really anything that needs further discussion or debate. It is what it is. We know Corbyn isn't going to come out and say, I'm a Remainer or I'm a Brexiteer or whatever. We know he's going to come out with the same answers. And we know Boris Johnson is going to come out and lie about a date and probably not honour that date and say we're going to get Brexit done. It's, as Tom says, I think the other issues, the stuff that's in the middle, the stuff around homelessness, the stuff around poverty, the stuff around NHS and the waiting list and where the money is going to be spent and how we're going to be moving in the next 5 years into sort of technological areas and the infrastructure of the country and the rail and the roads, all of this stuff are the middle ground issues which are going to swing voters backwards or forwards. And I think we underestimate in our cynicism, as Cooper talks about, that actually this election can swing from one side to the other. Little do we know. So finally, Cooper, you didn't say who you felt won today. What was your view?
I think you can give Corbyn a score of 6 to 7 out of 10, and Johnson a score of 4 to 5 out of 10.
Wow, George, he's rating Johnson 3 or 4, very low.
I said 4 or 5.
Oh, did you say 4 or 5? It's still quite low, though, isn't it?
Let's see.
I said that I'd have I said on the chat that I'd have Corbyn as a 6 and Johnson as a 5, and I think that's only because Corbyn won slightly, just about.
Yeah.
But neither of them really did anything to change anyone's view of them in the public, so it's not really going to make a huge difference. So neither of them can go and get an 8 or a 9 or anything like that.
I do think that, though, due to the fact that Corbyn did slightly better, there may be just like a little increase to Labour in the polls, and maybe a little decrease to the Tories, but it won't be a massive game changer. Probably about 1 or 2 points at best.
We need all we can get, really. I think take that.
Captain Swiss says that it was basically a draw. He says Boris strong on Brexit, Corbyn at home on domestic. Probs hasn't moved the dial much, and that's pretty much what you were saying as well, isn't it, George?
Aye.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, listen, we will cover the other debates, guys, as well. Let's. It's fair to say from the views of our panel today that there was a lot of hype, and it was a little bit of an anticlimax. This particular debate was. Expect on the next debate the introduction of the other leaders, no doubt. Expect, I would say, ganging up on Corbyn by Swinson and the Tories. Sorry, they're exactly the same. I meant Swinson and Boris. But that's not surprising, guys, because we're hearing that deals are being talked about behind the scenes. So watch this space. So listen, final word from you, George, before we call it a day.
Well, just thanks for having me. I ain't got really much more to contribute, to be fair.
Okay, no, thanks. You've been brilliant. And Cooper, anything else you want to say before we call it a day?
Well, let's see. The debate, I think, was better than expected, though. A lot of things that need to improve on, such as Corbyn needs to give more of an answer to his Brexit thing by saying that. Perhaps be a bit more saying, I'm more likely to vote this way, but depending on what happens, I may vote this way. Something like that, or like the country's divided, and I want to try to be a bit of a moderator, at least something better than what he's currently saying.
Yeah.
Johnson needs to make more decisions outside of Brexit, because there's no doubt if this debate didn't have Brexit involved in, I'm pretty certain, hands down, Corbyn would probably win, and he'd probably have a much higher score than what we are giving him currently. He might have even got an 8 or 7 out of 10.
Yeah, I agree.
So there's stuff like that. For me, the question about who would you give each other for a present was just completely pointless. No need for that.
What was that point? Sorry, who would you what? Sorry.
What would you give each other under the tree for a Christmas present?
Oh yeah, silly question.
Let's see. Let's see. This is something you would probably ask more of a celebrity, not a politician.
Yeah.
Especially in a political debate.
Yeah. Well, you don't want to ask me what I'd leave under Boris's Christmas tree, so
you'd probably leave him a lump of coal.
That works.
All right. But let's see. But one thing I would probably also say, we need to, for you Fist, you need to figure out what that echo is, because I can still hear myself echoing.
Okay. Well, we will figure that out for next time, no doubt. Tom, final words from yourself, my friend.
I'll try to keep it short. I just want to talk about quickly. You had lots of people going on about Corbyn hasn't been strong on his Brexit view. Why don't he just come out and say what he thinks? Because it's not very good leadership, and it makes him look weak. And to an extent, I do agree. Like Corbyn being neutral on the affair isn't ideal for a party leader. But I just want to point out, as I've been seeing a lot of Liberal Democrats recently, that if Corbyn comes out as a Leaver or a Remainer, right, it's just not worth it. It's just going to lose us so many votes, because you know how the press is going to take it. It's going to Corbyn's trying to stop Brexit, or Swinson will be like, oh yeah, Corbyn's a Brexiteer and whatnot. And you'll find, even though the policy clearly states we're having a second referendum, it's just going to be spinned either way. And it's just not worth the hit we're going to have in votes. It's going to alienate Leavers in our party. It's going to alienate Remainers in our party, because we are a broad coalition. So personally, I just saying that you can only expect that Corbyn was going to try and deflect those questions about Brexit, because he's not going to come out on it, because it's just not worth the votes. like, sure, if he comes out as being a Brexiteer, he might pick up some more Brexiteer votes. But then he's going to lose a lot of potential or even current Remain voters. It's just not worth the hits we're going to take either way. So although Corbyn did seem a bit weak on Brexit, you can expect that and you can understand that. It's just a shame that they didn't focus on many other issues regarding, like, I mean, I just wish the media weren't so adamant that this is a Brexit election. It'd be nice if we were able to talk about other things, but it was always going to be rigged from the start, really, in that regard. So, yeah, it's unfortunate, overhyped, but I mean, I haven't seen it yet, so I don't know what I'm talking about. But
Right, well, listen, we'll definitely make sure you watch the next one, Tom, before we jump on, because we'll have a lot more to discuss and talk about. Listen, guys, thank you very much for joining us. We hope to join you all again and get a panel again to discuss the next leaders debate, where hopefully we'll have a little bit more to discuss and talk about, and hopefully be discussing a debate that we can actually say has influenced and changed the national picture in respect to this general election. I want to finally just say to all of our viewers and any of our subsequent viewers that please register to vote. The statistics out at the moment, which are basically stating that there's a very, very low turnout in registration to vote.
From my understanding, there's about 1.7 million people who registered to vote.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that in certain demographics, like within young people and ethnic minorities, there's a deficit and there's a low turnout in people who registered to vote. We also know that last general election, 2017, there was some 200,000 people that applied to register to vote after the deadline. So don't let it go. And imagine those 2,000 or 3,000 votes that Corbyn was missed to become Prime Minister, that could have gone his way. So please listen and register to vote. Go on the registertovote.gov.uk website, type it into Google, whatever you've got to do, and register to vote, because you will not be able to turn up at your polling station on December the 12th to vote unless you're registered and you haven't registered before. Take care, guys, and I'll see you all soon.
Thank you very much.
No problem. Peace out.
Thanks for having us.
Take care. Good night.